Welcome back to Family Twist. If you haven't listened to part one of our conversation with John Portman, pause right here and go check it out. You won't want to miss the foundation of this incredible story. Last time, John shared how his journey of self-discovery took a shocking turn when he uncovered his Irish roots, only to hit a bureaucratic wall that made proving his identity nearly impossible. But that wasn't the end of the road. In today's episode, we dive into the legal battle that changed everything, the DNA breakthrough that turned the tide, and the moment he finally held his Irish passport in his hands. Kendall leads this powerful discussion as John lays out the fight for recognition that not only impacted his own life, but is now paving the way for other adoptees searching for their rightful heritage. Trust, this story just gets better. So let's get right into part two.
And I think to the enormous credit of Ireland, they did finally stop and say, oh, there are a lot of adopted people out there. And he's raised a very good point. Adopted people can't follow our process because they can't supply the documents needed in order to obtain citizenship. And it was DNA that changed everything. I had to hire lawyers. It cost a lot of money. Thank goodness I had the resources to do that. Adopted people without resources, they're just without luck. And the lawyers said, look, we have DNA evidence, which is the strongest kind of evidence possible. When a woman gives birth, my mother could have said John F. Kennedy Jr., who was president then, was my father. I mean, it would have been a lie, of course, but who knows? You can write whatever you want in this birth certificate. And what the lawyers argued is that DNA evidence does not lie. It is the best kind of evidence possible. And he has DNA evidence that shows he is the son of someone who was born in Ireland. Now, it turns out my mother's family was also completely Irish. They had emigrated. My mother's grandfather, my great-grandfather, emigrated to the U.S. during the Great Famine. He was a 9-year-old boy. So my birth mother would have qualified for Irish citizenship, but because she didn't obtain it, she couldn't pass it on to me. So I could only qualify through my bio father. And what the lawyers argued in Arizona court was that we in America now routinely put people away in jail for many years, for life. We find these rape kits from the 1980s and the 1990s, which are just lying fallows somewhere. We now have this extraordinary new technology, DNA, which can prove definitively that someone was at the scene of the crime or left sperm at the scene of the crime. We have proof to tie a criminal to a crime scene, and we use that to put people in jail for a very long time. Why can't we use DNA evidence to help adopted people gain legal recognition of who they are, where they came from? And it took a lot of waiting, and finally the state of Arizona said yes right away. I had a terrific judge, and she said yes. She said, this is convincing. The trial, which lasted about 2.5 hours, really turned on my DNA angel, Professor Jennifer Harris of the University of Waterloo in Ontario, Canada. She came in as an expert witness, and she explained what DNA testing is, how DNA works. Each person bears the DNA not only of their mother and father, but of their mother's mother and father, their father's father. It just keeps going back many generations. And she told the judge, there is no question John is who he says he is. And yes, according to the law of Ireland, he is entitled to citizenship. That was a happy day when Arizona gave me my identity back, if you will. And then I sent this document to Ireland in application for citizenship. And then I had to wait for a long time. Legally, no country is bound to accept a ruling, even a legal ruling, from another country. So America had told me who I was. Right. I didn't have a birth certificate even then, even after the legal ruling, because of the law in the state of Arizona. I wasn't able to send on my original birth certificate. Honestly, though, because my lawyers have seen it, my original birth certificate doesn't state my father's name anyway. Many children born illegitimate in America have a birth certificate like that. You have the mother's name, but not the father's, for a variety of reasons. In my case, my mother was trying to protect my bio dad. So we sent this legal ruling on to Ireland and just waited, and Ireland didn't know what to do with the legal ruling, and ultimately then said, we need a whole new round of DNA testing. It has to be done either in an Irish embassy or in an Irish consulate, because we need one of our employees to witness this. And they knew that I had a bio sister, a half sister in America, and they said, you must be tested with her.
And you had already found her?
I had found her, yes. And it seemed that Ireland was not really accepting this declaration of paternity from the Superior Court in the state of Arizona, because they wanted a new round of DNA testing. And then a DNA expert from Ireland came in and explained how I couldn't have faked this. I guess Ireland was worried that maybe I found someone who was related to my bio dad, and somehow I paid that person a great deal of money to take a DNA. And the DNA, I had a DNA expert then in Ireland and one in America saying no, one in Canada. Professor Harris is Canadian, explaining no, that it's not possible, because they had the DNA matches on my mother's side. I have a bunch of cousins in Minneapolis, and then I have a whole bunch of cousins, even more, in Ireland. And the DNA expert said he couldn't have faked this, because my bio sister here in America refused to help me. So I thought I was out of luck. Yes. So I had to hire a lawyer. I had to find a lawyer in Ireland who argued he can't be blamed. His sister refuses to help him, and that's not his fault. And you can't withhold this tremendous privilege of citizenship from him simply because she refuses to help him. And I didn't think Ireland would accept that. But right away, Ireland said, oh, okay. And then I'm still not really sure what happened, because the Department of Foreign Affairs in Ireland refuses to discuss individual cases, even with the individuals involved. I don't know why they changed their mind, but one day I heard from them. And then finally one day they said, yeah, we're going to send you a passport. And I was thrilled. So I was then at the end of the line, if you will. I mean, I got where I wanted to go. I wanted official recognition that I had been adopted. I wanted recognition of where I came from, not purely for selfish reasons, because it made me feel better about myself, but also because I had this huge reward, this pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. I had not only Irish citizenship, but EU citizenship. So I'm allowed to live and work not only in Ireland, but in any of the 27 EU countries. The Irish passport is very special. It's the only one of the 27 EU countries that allows a person to live and work not only in the EU, but also in the UK. So it's really a huge privilege, and I was glad to get that. And then when I started talking about what I had experienced, I started hearing from other adopted people, and I don't want to exaggerate it. It's maybe 30, 35 Americans, Canadians, and Australians who have said, I'm in this exact same boat. Can you please help me? I want to get Irish citizenship. It means a lot to me. And I would say again and again, I'm not a DNA expert, but I can put you in touch with one, and she works for free. She's part of an organization which necessitates that anybody who volunteers refuse any kind of financial compensation. Professor Harris did a lot of work for me. I didn't pay her a dime. I would have been willing to, but she can't accept anything. And then I found this terrific lawyer in Dublin who now has, I think, a new side business working with foreigners who want Irish passports. Most of them are adopted people, but not all. So I heard from one woman in Australia, and I think her case is very interesting. Technically, I guess you'd say she was adopted, but what she did was explain to me she has 7 brothers and sisters. She thinks she probably has many more. Her mother, maybe 25 years ago, used a sperm donor in order to conceive. And so the sperm donor was Irish, from Ireland. And this woman in Australia said that she and her brothers and sisters were very excited by my story. They want Irish citizenship as well. Now, if you read Irish law, it says anyone whose mother or father was born on the Isle of Ireland is automatically an Irish citizen. People hadn't considered the possibility that a child might have been born of a sperm donor. She didn't know her father. She'd never met her father, but she did know, she had proof, DNA proof, that he was from Ireland. And she and her siblings wanted citizenship as well. So she is working with this lawyer in Dublin, who's very good, and they're fighting for citizenship as well. And I think if you read the law, I'm not a lawyer, I think that she does actually qualify for Irish citizenship, and she does this as well. So some people, I think most people who are adopted are like you and me. We're the traditional adoptees. But there are other kinds of adoptees as well. Those, say, for example, born of sperm donors. And we know that women can sell their eggs as well. So what if a young Irish woman who needed money 10, 15, 20 years ago sold one of her eggs? The resulting child, I think technically, would qualify for Irish citizenship as well. I'm no expert. That's for Ireland to decide. And of course,
I think you're right.
Ireland is part of the EU. And so when one country says yes and the others say no, that creates real tension. Ireland is very emphatic that everyone born of an Irish mother or father, or anyone who can claim an Irish grandparent, is entitled to Irish citizenship, whether the person was born legitimate or illegitimate. I was born illegitimate, as you were. Until very recently, a number of European countries like Germany and Switzerland said very clearly, if you were born illegitimate, don't even contact us, you don't qualify. What these countries were trying to do was shore up Christian morality, was trying to discourage men and women from having sex before marriage. And one of the penalties was, if you have a child, that child will never be able to have your citizenship. It's a little complicated. I mean, if you're born in Germany in the 60s and your parents weren't married and they were both German, I'm not exactly sure how you would get a passport. You'd be stateless. I don't know what happened to adopted kids born in, say, for example, Germany and Switzerland. But the point is, there was a real penalty levied on illegitimate kids. And that is, in my view, very sad. Very sad indeed. I remember that I was writing a book years ago and I came across a Supreme Court case here in the United States that just grabbed me. It almost made me cry. This is Levy v. Louisiana. So in 1968, 5 kids lost their mother. And this was a wrongful death suit. Through very poor medical care, inattention, the mother died needlessly in Louisiana. And the 5 children found a lawyer, and they did file a wrongful death suit in Louisiana. And they wanted damages because their mother had died needlessly. And the court said, no, we're not going to give you anything because y'all were born illegitimate, so you don't have the right to bring suit at all. Only kids who are born legitimate can file a suit like this. And so the lawyer took the case to the Supreme Court in the United States. In 1968, we're in the midst of the sexual revolution. Gay rights started to become an agenda. And the lawyer argued, kids who are born illegitimate should have the same rights and privileges as kids who are born legitimate. And the Supreme Court said yes. Yes, they should. It's not your fault if you were born illegitimate. You can be religiously, socially conservative if you like. You can say having sex before marriage is really bad. But the kid who's born didn't choose to be born illegitimate, and so it's really unfair to penalize him or her. All I'm saying is that the world has changed a lot, especially America has changed so much since we were born. And isn't it wonderful?
I hope that we don't slide backward, but
I don't know how many
that's
people are saying now,
yeah.
America is changing
I'll
so
probably
fast. You're lucky that you have the right to move to Europe, that you have other options. America is real. I mean, so we have a new president. It hasn't even been a week yet. Boy, are things changing quickly here. I don't want to get political here, but I think we can all agree things are changing very quickly.
yep. And Corey and I, we used to avoid politics, and now we don't avoid it quite as much.
Uh-oh,
But
so here we go.
yeah, so our listeners know where we land. I do have a question for you
Sure.
about finding your biological family. You mentioned a half sister. Have you connected with other family members at all?
Yes, on both my mother's and my father's side. The mother's family in Minnesota, just love fest. They were shocked to find out that I existed. They had no idea. Just love. My mother was one of 7 kids.
Wow.
Poor Irish family. She had 5 brothers. 3 of the 5 brothers became university professors. They were so surprised that I'm a professor as well. Just really good, nice people, kind. I'm invited now to funerals. I get all the holiday cards. So my bio dad was a married man having an affair, and I've only met one of my bio sisters. I have 2, and that did not go well, unfortunately. A lot of anger, a lot of resentment. She said really bad things about my mother. She said really bad things about me because I was born illegitimate, which is shocking in this day and age. But yeah, that did not go well. And then
Ridiculous.
Very hurtful. And then in Ireland, my father was also one of 7 kids. Both my bio mom and my bio dad had a mother named Mary and a father named James, and they were both one of 7 kids. So in Ireland, things have gone, there's been a lot of drama. Things kind of, sort of, they were very hard. And then things started going badly, and then everything ended. And then, long story short, I was invited to do a couple of radio programs, an article written about my adoption in the Irish Times, specifically tied to my nationality, my citizenship as an Irish person. And then there was an article written in the BBC, and then there was a big article written in CNN. So I was invited to do several big radio shows in Ireland. Right after that, I got an email one day from someone. I recognized the last name. It's the last name of my father's bio family. It's a very popular name in Ireland. He said, I think I'm related to you. I knew your father pretty well, and I think you and I are first cousins. He and I are first cousins, and he and his sister are very close. They have welcomed me. It's a large family, and they're aware of what happened with my one bio sister. The 2 bio sisters I have are not friends, and they really don't speak. Anyway, these cousins in Ireland said, look, you've only encountered one part of our large family. We're going to be the happy, accepting part, and they have accepted me as well. And we're great friends. I mean, this has all happened in the last 5-6 months. So we were talking, texting, FaceTiming, everything was going great. And I mean, really, it was probably within 2 or 3 weeks, we all got a notification from Ancestry.com that there was someone we were related to. It turns out they have a brother, a half brother. They never knew he existed. He had done an Ancestry.com test.
Oh, goodness.
And so my cousins, Jim and Jane, have a new brother named Desmond. And it turns out that Jim and Jane, so their father was the brother of my bio dad, and our bio dads were very close friends. Jim and Jane's father also had an affair and produced a child, and that child had taken an Ancestry.com test, and he and I now have become great friends. My father was one of 7 kids. There were 2 girls and 5 boys, exactly the same as my bio mom's story. So my bio dad, very strict Catholic family in Dublin. My bio dad was one of 5 boys, and to date we know that 4 of the 5 boys, as married men, had affairs that produced illegitimate children. So we're up to 4 now of these illegitimate kids. And I met one of them in Dublin. She was the first I met on my father's side. She contacted me after I found out who my bio mom and bio dad were. She contacted me one day through Ancestry.com. They have a messaging site. And she said, "Hello, this will sound like a strange message. I'm related to you and I would like to figure out how." She said, "I am writing this message that seems so out of left field, but I was adopted and I don't know where I came from." And I wrote back to her and I said, "Oh, sweetie, I don't wonder at all. I was adopted as well." And I said, I could tell her. Anyway, so there were, in the days before abortion and birth control, there were a lot of affairs. No doubt there still are. And a lot of married men ended up with illegitimate children. And again, in the Catholic world, there was a pretty clearly defined process for what to do. It involved a lot of shame and pain and separation. That said, however, I defend this Catholic system because it worked very well for me. My adoptive parents, like your adoptive parents, they were really good people, and they did a fabulous job. So I ended up very fortunate. And so all things considered, I'm grateful to this Catholic system of which I'm a product. And I'm very happy because things turned out so well for me. I was able to find out both my bio mom's family and my bio dad's family. And I now have this official legal proof of my national heritage, which is Irish. I have an Irish passport, which entitles me to vast privileges for which I am grateful.
Very good. I am so happy that the work that you've done for yourself can only help others. It already has. And I think that's super important. It's funny, my biological father always says that his mother is Irish, and she has some, but not enough for me to be able to claim the heritage. But it's still fascinating. I love learning where I came from, just like you have. And it's not quite as concrete, but it doesn't surprise any listener if they've seen a photograph of me or an image of me that European all the way. So it is what it is. But thank you so much for what you've done.
You're very welcome. Thank you for inviting me. I received an email probably 10 days ago from a woman in California who's probably in her mid-50s. And she had contacted me 2 or 3 months ago. And she said, "Please help. I am in the same boat as you." She had started trying to gain Irish citizenship maybe 4 years before I did. She's in California, so she was working through the consulate of San Francisco, and she got nowhere. Long story short, she submitted DNA tests to them, and you can look it up online. If you look at the Irish consulate in San Francisco, they explicitly state now that they do accept DNA evidence. You need more than DNA evidence. You need some sort of legal document. So, for example, I had to go to court in Arizona. It took a long time, a lot of money, but I did have a legal document. When I was applying for citizenship, it seemed as though Ireland was very suspicious of this legal document. They didn't know what to do with it. But it could be that I was one of the very first people to try this, and that therefore Ireland was still figuring out what to do with adopted people who don't have the papers that non-adopted people almost always have. So anyway, this woman in California is thrilled, and she sent me the link, and sure enough, the Irish consulate says, "We're aware now that DNA evidence is changing the whole ballgame, and we are open to accepting DNA evidence, but we also want some sort of other documentation." It's truly wonderful that adopted people can enjoy the same rights and privileges as non-adopted people, because usually, not always, adopted people were born illegitimate until not so long ago in America. Being illegitimate was kind of shameful.
It was. It was. So thank you again, John. This has been
Thank you,
it's a
Kendall.
fascinating
My pleasure.
story. And I hope that you and I can stay connected, because
Yes.
I'd like to see what other things you learn about your unknown life.
Yes. Thank you for the good work you do for adopted people. Terrific podcast. And yeah, as you know very well, there are actually quite a few adopted people around. Sometimes when people say to me, wow, you're adopted, I've never met anyone adopted before. There are actually a lot of adopted people out there. So you're helping a lot of people. The world is changing. I'm part of an older generation, pre-birth control, pre-abortion, born when illegitimacy was really shameful, when unmarried women who became pregnant were shunned by their families, their communities. A lot of that is changing, but hey, it's great that you're helping all adopted people through this podcast.
From legal red tape to DNA battles to that triumphant moment when John was finally recognized as an Irish citizen, what a roller coaster. But beyond his own victory, his fight is opening doors for other adoptees struggling with the same roadblocks. If John's story resonated with you, please share this episode with someone who might need to hear it. And as always, make sure you're subscribed so you never miss an episode of Family Twist. Thank you for being part of our community, and remember, family secrets are the ultimate plot twist. The Family Twist podcast is presented by Savoir Faire Marketing Communications and produced by How the Cow Ate the Cabbage, LLC.